That doctor title is really new for me, but I'm embracing it. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Again, my name is Erin Perry. I am the managing editor of Outlier Media, and today with this fantastic group of leaders, we are going to talk to you for about 35 minutes about how we work collaboratively and why we work collaboratively. I understand that this group is one that kind of likes the nuts and bolts of things, and so we'll try not to talk at 40,000 feet, which is what, a lot of our corporate sponsors and funders and philanthropists and things like that would like us to do, but we're gonna be very straightforward with you all today because collaboration is not always easy, but it is absolutely necessary. So the first thing that I would like for the panel to do is just introduce yourself, give your name and your title and your news organization, and we will get started.
Thank you, Dr. P.
You're welcome.
My name is Christine Ferretti. I am the managing editor for Bridge Detroit.
I'm Kennan Oliphant. I'm the Senior Director of News for WXYZ TV.
I'm Jerome Vaughn. I'm the News Director of WDET, Detroit Public Radio.
I'm Lori Higgins. I'm the Bureau Chief for Chalkbeat Detroit.
I'm Sarah Alvarez, and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Outlier Media.
I'm Nina Mizuraka Ignaczak, and I am the founder and editor of Planet Detroit.
Great, thank you so much. So when we say we, this is the we that we're talking about, but we do have three other collaborative partners who are likely in the audience today. Those partners are the Detroit Free Press, Detroit Metro Times, and Michigan Public. And so as you can see, this panel is already very large. We couldn't add any more chairs, but just know that they are here and around in the audience if you all want to ask them questions. So some of the ways that we regularly collaborate, we again as this group, we have monthly meetings where we sit around the table, both virtual and actual, and we do something that a lot of people would walk into a room and say, what in the world is happening here? And that thing that we do is we actually talk about what we're working on. And so I'm gonna pick on our partners at Channel 7 here. We have known about Channel 7's plan to cover the draft, not super specific, but we had enough information to know that Channel 7 had draft coverage on lock. And so our goal was to support that draft coverage in ways that they were not necessarily doing, right? Like we didn't want to duplicate work, right? None of us are resource rich. And so that's not something that we want to do, which is what we talk about at these monthly meetings. We're trying to find ways to make sure that Detroiters get the best information to fill information gaps and accountability gaps so that they can make well-informed decisions every day. And you don't do that by doing the same thing that the rest of the news outlets in the city are doing. And so we meet monthly and we have those conversations. What are you working on? What do you need? How can we help? What sources do you need that you don't have that we can actually provide for you? So that's the radical thing that we do. On a quarterly basis, we invite our freelance network to those meetings, and they're able to come into those meetings and actually pitch us story ideas. And our goal is to always find a home for that particular story idea. If it's not at Outlier, then maybe someone at Bridge Detroit might pick it up, or maybe Michigan Public can help direct them. But our goal is to make sure that those pitches either find a home immediately, or we help them craft it in the way that will actually end up being picked up by a news outlet. The other thing that that all of us in the collaborative do is we contribute an editor to editing the Detroit Documenters notes. Detroit Documenters are paid and trained citizens or residents who attend city, local meetings, state meetings, some other special meetings, and they take notes and they do the things that journalists used to be able to do when we were people rich, right? When we had a lot of people around the newsrooms. And so those notes then are vetted by editors at one of these news organizations, and we make sure that we are checking those things for accuracy before we make them publicly available on a website. We do a lot of co-authoring and cross-publishing. We have editorial projects that are ongoing. Some of us share reporters, and by share reporters, we mean that we're covering parts of that reporter's salary, right? So that's a really interesting concept that we would love to talk to you all about. But our collective baby is this QR code that you see up here. It's called Streetlight Detroit. And Streetlight Detroit is a biweekly newsletter that focuses on news that is at the intersection of safety, justice, and social justice specifically, and policing. This is not your average policing newsletter, right? I think most of us in this room are familiar with the idea of newsrooms having a police scanner and doing a crime blotter, things of that nature. That is not this. Our goal is to make sure that we are covering information at the intersections of those topics that often go overlooked. So, for example, Kobe Levin from Outlier Media wrote a story about how overconsumption of crime news can affect the brain. Right, so that's what we're talking about. We're not going to tell you, oh, there were 31 freeway shootings on the freeway, and not tell you how that translates into the number of closed-circuit television cameras that are on the roads to help police investigate violent crimes, right? So that is the premise of Streetlight Detroit. So the next thing that I want to do, because we'll hear a little bit more about Streetlight Detroit throughout this process, and if you all have questions for it, we're happy to answer those. But the first question that I would like for us to talk about today is going to go to Sarah Alvarez. And Sarah, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about how we decide which false narratives to prioritize for correction through collaboration.
So nice to see all you all. For those of you who are new in the city, welcome. We hope it's wonderful, and I apologize only slightly about the weather, right? We want to be realistic, though. We deal with a lot of this. So I think one of the things about collaboration, about successful collaboration, is really knowing when to stay in your lane and when to maybe offer help or work together. And I think we're very good on this panel at doing that, at staying in our lane and just kind of sharing resources and helping. And our lane at Outlier is filling information, accountability, and connection gaps. That's extremely important, and it is not narrative shift work, though. Narrative shift work is so difficult and does take a lot of people and a general audience. And Outlier, as proud of it as we are, does not command a general audience yet. Well, I think Channel 7 does command a general audience, but most of us cannot. And so I think when we identify issues that are really holding us back as a city, and narratives that are contributing harm on a continual basis, we do have to kind of decide, like, is this something that we can work together on? Crime and safety is definitely one of those issues. People will consume as much crime news as you will give them. There is something about it that makes it really addictive, and it makes you feel like you need to know, but it does not make you feel safer. And I think also one thing that we have to really think about carefully at all moments is who benefits from people feeling unsafe and feeling like their neighbors are putting them at risk, right? And that, I do think, leaves people very vulnerable to overreach by the state and state violence. And that's something that we really want to be cognizant of. And again, this is just a narrative shift problem. So, of course, the people on the stage do not have the power to actually change day-to-day events in the city, but we do have the power, if we work together, to help people right-size their view of the risk of being here in Detroit and kind of like what really puts their safety at risk. So I think that that's why, and let me say that it's also this idea of kind of focusing on safety, justice, and policing was brought to us by a Detroit documenter who had been covering the Board of Police Commissioner meetings for about a year, and was like, well, these people are not going to keep us safe. This is not a professionalized enough body not doing their job. So what could you all do as a collaborative that could help in this area? And so we really have done our best to try to kind of figure out what we can do.
Thank you, Sarah. That documenter is a student here at Wayne State. Her name is Alex Klaus. And so Alex is still, she's amazing. She really is. Alex is still very involved in Streetlight. She writes for each of those editions something that we call Rewind, where she takes these retrospective looks at how things have changed over time. So for example, we hosted that little thing called the NFL Draft a few weeks ago, and there were some transit issues with some of the previous very large sporting events that Detroit had hosted. And so Alex took a look at the transit woes and how that may have affected people's perception of being able to get around Detroit safely and effectively when there are crowd management issues at play. And she did a really wonderful job with that. Thank you, Sarah. And so one of the things that we mentioned earlier is that there are other successful collaborations, these kind of intermittent collaborations outside of Streetlight Detroit that we take on. So Planet Detroit and Outlier have done air quality coverage. Outlier and Bridge Detroit have covered almost 50 budget hearings when the mayor was working to get his budget approved by City Council. So can one of you talk about those collaborations? And we can also talk about the ones that Chalkbeat has with Bridge Detroit. I think you all probably have quite a few very separate collaborations. So let's talk a little bit about those collaborations, what makes them successful, and what are some of the challenges?
So thanks so much, Erin. So Planet Detroit focuses primarily on environmental and public health news, but we're very, very small, and we are indebted to all of our partners who help us with all of the resources that we need to try to bring this important information to our audience, to Detroiters, to Metro Detroiters. Air quality is one of those big topics, and it really kind of blew up last summer here in Detroit when we were, for a few days, had the worst air quality in the world during the Canadian wildfire smoke events that happened. All of a sudden, people were thinking about air quality and wanted to understand what it was and what is the air quality index, and something we just never dealt with here before, kind of in the eastern side of the U.S. You people from the western states, you deal with this all the time, but it was very new for us, and we as reporters too, even though we cover environment, we hadn't really covered air quality in that much depth because it just hadn't been something that was as much on our radar. But it's there with and without the wildfire smoke issues. We have a lot of air pollution here in Wayne County. Wayne County just got another F for air quality from the American Lung Association. And so, people in the city in pockets of the city are dealing with challenging air quality issues for a long time. And so these wildfires just kind of brought it to the forefront and got everybody thinking about the topic. So when we were able to get a grant to partner with other media outlets and with an advocacy organization to report on what's going on with air quality, of course, we turned to our partners at Outlier, who had just hired a science reporter, luckily, and were able to produce a series that really dived deep into kind of the overall picture of what's happening with air quality here, but also what some of the shortcomings are. And we have a movement here in the city where we're installing a lot of these air quality monitors around the region. In fact, Wayne County yesterday just announced they installed 100 air quality monitors across the county that people can get on their phone and find out what's going on. That kind of remains to be seen. And so one of the questions that we asked was, even if we have all of this data, what is that really going to mean? And so collaborating was really important because it was a big story. We produced a big series with a lot of different parts, and having those resources come together was just invaluable, and I think really allowed us to have an impact that we otherwise as small news organizations may not have had.
For sure. Collaboration definitely tries to harness reach. We have larger media partners in the collaborative, in the Detroit Free Press, and in WXYZ. And so we definitely understand that, and we're okay with saying that. We need to collaborate on this particular theme because we know that it will go further with Detroiters, and that's the point of it all, as Anthony Hamilton might say. Christine, would you like to talk a little bit about budget hearing coverage and also some of the challenges that comes with that, right? Go right ahead.
Thank you, Erin. Yeah, for sure. I think this is a great example of how, as entities that are working together, we really saw an opportunity here to do something different. Being in the Detroit landscape for such a long time as a reporter, I know historically kind of the tone was, you cover certain aspects of the budget. It can be very intimidating, overwhelming, hard to digest. And so, traditionally media kind of covers, the mayor presenting and kind of the council's vote, and a few odds and ends. But what we thought could really make a difference to break down, some of the really complicated parts of this process was to team up and, to bring some of our reporting power forward to, as Erin said, cover every single hearing. So that was not easy. I see some of our people here. Kaylee Lickleader is one of our contributors. She worked on it. Malachi Barrett is over there. I see him. Our
Kaylee.
city hall reporter. And he took on a lot of this. So that, for my part, that was like a big lift for our team. But we really saw value in being there for these and giving our readers a very digestible summary of each one. And we have it on our website, and now it's a living document that you can go to, and there's pull-down tabs for areas of interest you might have. So that creates, an easy way to understand the top issues with each departmental budget and how it works. And we've also been able to come together through that process now, and we're continuing to look at the issues that rose to the top in each area, and we're prioritizing how we will continue to roll out this coverage. And we're doing this in a way that I haven't seen in my career, just really being very thorough and deliberate about having this available, because we want to empower people in the city to really understand, how this works, and, also be able to come back with that accountability to the city too if things change or don't, come through the way they've been promised.
And we will absolutely hold you accountable for that. And we do that, again, a lot through our Detroit documenters. Documenters are not reporters, but oh boy, they will ask you the same kinds of tough questions and interrogate the things that you say in their notes in the same way that professional reporters will do. So let's talk a little.
Can I say something real quick
sure.
about that coverage there was so much of it. It's like no news organization really could have done that on their own. But Kaylee, who keeps great track of public comment at meetings, also noticed, I think one of the big impacts that has had already is that public comment at the budget hearing doubled this year when compared to last year. Right, so this type of coverage really did help people understand that somebody was paying attention, and it might be worth their while to have their comments in the record, and that officials would know that people were watching when those comments were made.
Thanks, Sarah. That's so true. And having this collaborative too, it's a way to deviate so much from the traditional. And what I love about working with all of you is that we have ideas and we're like, let's do it. Mm-hmm. And typically, I think it's been,
It's been successful.
Absolutely.
We do. But there are challenges. and perhaps one of those challenges might be, how transparent one news organization might be over another, what the editorial standards are. So editorial integrity is something that we have to grapple with. Can anyone on the stage talk a little bit about maybe some of the rules that exist in your news house, maybe for a larger news house, that wouldn't necessarily exist for a smaller news house, right? Our top decision maker sits 3 feet away from me, right? Like she's really close by. And so it would be nice to hear about maybe how you were able to get buy-in from some of these bigger bosses that you might have that don't sit in the same rooms with you. So I'm looking at you, Kennan, to see if you might be able to address that.
Well, we're the newest member of the collaborative, and I did a lot of research before I went to my boss and my vice president of news that sat in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I pitched to him that Outlier and the collaborative are covering stories that we could not get to. And basically, we wanted to be a voice of the community, but we were having a very hard time getting to the traditional meetings that the documenters were getting to, and I saw so much value in the people on this stage being able to get to those things that we could not. And so I called Erin and I said, how do I become a member? And Erin gave me a PowerPoint presentation, walked me through it, and then I presented that.
I had help with that, by the way.
And then I presented that PowerPoint to all of my senior leadership at EW Scripps, and they were like, go for it. They thought that it was something that could really enhance our journalism and make sure that people of Detroit, and really Metro Detroit, to become more informed citizens of what's going on. So, I mean, my news team, when we were talking about the collaboration, they thought, we got to give them our story ideas? And I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, we're partners, now. And there's this trust among all of us that we're not going to, rip off somebody or, take something for our own. This is the team, and our team has just grown. And once they got used to that concept and idea, it was easier for my team to talk about the stories, because if we were working on something and somebody on this panel or somebody else in the collaborative was working on it too, then we can do it together and come up with a bigger, better story, because at the end of the day, again, it's about our audience and being more well-informed.
Can I add to that? I just want to double down on that. We had a new intern start this week, and she pitched a story. She wanted to do a guide to the farmers markets, and because I had just been on the Outlier collaboration call, I knew that Outlier was working on that. So I asked her to double check, and then, I don't think we've talked about it yet, but my hope is we can expand it and maybe build on that guide and include the suburbs as well, so making it bigger and better. We do the same thing with Bridge Detroit. Bridge Detroit has an environment reporter on staff, but nobody can get to all of this. So we Christine and I and Jenna, the reporter, are always in touch, making sure, like, are you going to that? Are you going to cover this? Making sure that we're not duplicating efforts, because how useless would it be for us to go cover the same press conference on the same topic? So it is a bit of, opening up your newsroom, your, trade secrets, but I think there's so much value to it.
And there has to be a ton of trust with that, right? Because we don't have contracts, right? We have republishing rules that are presented to all of the partners, and so you come to these meetings, you read those things, and you understand, hey, this is how this works. Also, there are a ton of witnesses in a meeting. If if you do decide to take a story and run with it, it's like, oh, we remember someone else said that. But there are often MOUs that are in place, particularly with the intermittent partnerships. Lori, I know Chalkbeat Detroit has a few of those in play. Can you talk a little bit about how you all come to partner along the way in addition to the bigger collaborative?
Sure. We have had an MOU in the past with Bridge, Michigan, to share a reporter that came out of a lot of discussions about what everyone is saying about wanting to avoid duplication, because there are so few people in Michigan covering education, so few outlets covering education, and it didn't make sense that those of us who are covering it are all covering the same thing at the same time. And so we looked to partner with them so that we could share a reporter that would cover state education policy issues. And that was a very successful partnership. Today, we have a number of partnerships, one of them being with Bridge Detroit. They came to us last year, I think it was last year, and suggested that we partner on covering Detroit schools. We're an education publication, nonprofit. We write about schools in Detroit, but we also write about state education policy issues. But Detroit is our bread and butter, essentially, and it is one of the most troubled school districts in the nation that is trying to go through a transformation, a turnaround, so that students are performing better, getting a quality education. So it was important for me when they reached out to us and said, "Hey, would you like to collaborate?" I jumped at the idea because that meant that we could sort of pool our collective talents together to cover what I think, I'm biased, but I think is one of the most important stories in Michigan.
Great. Yeah, so it's reach, it's also expertise, right? We're not education writers, we're not environmental journalists, so that definitely goes a long way. Jerome, at WDET, you all often welcome in reporters from the collaborative to talk a lot about the work that they do. Why do you all do that?
Because we're crazy. No, because we believe in the mission of what everyone up here and the partners in the collaborative believe in, the importance of letting Detroiters, Metro Detroiters know what's going on, what makes a difference to them. That's the reason we're here. I don't think any of us are here to get rich. If we are, then there's a problem. But the point is, that's how we get the word out to our audiences, right? And so, we're a different platform, right? We are doing things on the web because everyone is, but we're not writing 200 column inches about something on the environment. We're not, writing some huge thing on something going on with education, but we can have these reporters come and tell our audience what is going on. Often we'll just sit and we'll interview one of the reporters and they'll be able to talk about what's going on that way. The documenters, I'll just throw out another shout to the documenters. There was a protest here that we didn't have the reporting capacity to get to. And so we interviewed that documenter about the story and got the word to our audience. So that's a good way to go.
So I'm hearing reach, I'm hearing expertise, I'm hearing platform now, right? Sometimes a story just is better as an audio story. It's better as, a visual story. It's better as a story for TV news. And so I will say that we are not, we're okay with, and we actually do this quite often, if we have a story that is presented to us at Outlier, and we're like, you know what, that one might make a better story for 7 News Detroit, then that's something that we will pass along. We do that quite a bit with Chalkbeat, obviously because the Detroit documenters cover school board meetings, right? And so we may hear and see things at these school board meetings, and we're like, you know what, that would be perfect for Chalkbeat Detroit. And so we do pass along tips that way as well. We probably have about 5 minutes or so left. So one thing I want to do, kind of like lightning style here, what is your best tip for other newsrooms around the country who might want to do something like this? What is one thing that they either should keep in mind, or maybe one reason why you think that they should actually move forward with doing something like this?
You looking at me?
Sure.
One reason to move forward with it is because we have to. I mean, we don't really have a choice. Whether you're a big daily or a small, struggling nonprofit, nobody has all of the resources that are needed to do this, and we're going to need to be doing more of it. So, tips for moving forward are just, let things happen. Don't try to control everything. Just sort of see where people's strengths and opportunities lie and kind of go with it.
I would say go for those broadcast partners. Most people in this country still get their information from TV news. And I think a lot of the relationships that people in the nonprofit news space have are from print. So we are more comfortable with each other. But having WXYZ in this partnership has been, like, I'm talking to one of your reporters today about power outages. one of my favorite things to talk about. And like, this is a story that everybody, it impacts all of us, but it really stays in the kind of like nonprofit news silos, and that is not serving anybody. So even though, you know, thank God you came to us and were like, do you want to partner? We'd like, yes. But, you know, try to make those relationships across those lines, because it's so important for our audience.
I think the biggest advice I can give is, if you're collaborating with another media outlet, is to communicate at the front end about the little things that sometimes you don't think about until like you're about to publish a story. Think about who's going to edit, what are our roles, who's going to take the lead on stories. I think sometimes like you have to have those conversations in the beginning of the process so that everyone sort of understands what their roles are.
I would say be fearless and persistent. I know when we first started doing this, there was a lot of about many different aspects of it. That trust hadn't been built yet, and so you just have to be persistent about it to really get over some of the hurdles.
I would say do your research and make sure that the collaboration that you want to do with another entity matches your mission and their mission. Because if there isn't alignment, it will never work.
That's great. For me, another key part of this specific collaboration, and then having newsrooms that work with documenters specifically, is it opens up the door to me to help train and bring in this next generation of journalists. And especially with groups like Documenters, you know that a lot of those people are coming from the community and are so passionate about the community. And these are the people that I want within our system to help support, and working as a team, they're getting a piece of each of our expertise from our own background. So not only are we helping to support them and get on the path to come behind us and continue on, but we're also giving them a platform to learn from various editors and you know, in different modalities of news too. So that to me is like a really key part and point of pride in being involved in this.
Thank you all for that. And I would add to that as we close out here that, you know, for every reason that there is to not collaborate with other news outlets in your area, there are 10 reasons that you absolutely should. Understand that it is hard. You are working with cross-functionally, right, with different rules, different bosses, different editors, different reporters of different strengths, but that is not a reason to not do it, because you are not the priority. The people who you serve are. Your bottom line should not be the only priority. The people who you serve should be the priority. And so I would just encourage you to look around the country, because there are several collaboratives that do something fairly similarly to what we do here, and they're doing well. And the people are actually benefiting from that collaboration. So I would just encourage you to look around, as Kennan said, do your research, figure out what your rules are, what your standards are, and just do it and call us. You know, if you need the nitty gritty, if you want to know, you know, what challenge did you not talk about on that stage, Erin? Yeah, that's why Jerome got the, why do you do that question? Because Jerome is very straightforward. So if you all if you need help, if you want to talk about ways that you can make this happen in your areas, please just reach out and we will be happy to assist with that. Thank you.